Jablam Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjarnov. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98, and you can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and please also click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, jablamsports.com, to see all our podcasts. Click on podcasts, and then for this one specifically, click on hockey. We have game notes for every episode. You'll get tidbits and different things and links to stuff we mentioned on this show. We are done our isolated friends for our episode 7. Time is flying by, and now it's a time for big episode. We have Ian Boivert on the show. He's from Rabid Habs. He's deputy editor there, and he's also part of the Nosebleeds Cast podcast. So check that out. Yes, he's from Connecticut, but he's also a big Habs fan. So he'll give you a little information on, what Habs could be getting in the draft lottery, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. A little bit of draft lottery, a little bit of how players and how everything's coming together with COVID, and what we think what could happen with the season playoffs coming back, what we think of it, and more, with maybe the Habs getting that first overall pick. And of course, what Ian's been up to. Time for some trending now. Doing trending now, helping me out, is Ian Boivert. Do you say Boivert or do you say Boivert? How do you say it? Do you pronounce it more like a French Canadian?
Yeah, you got it. It's Boivert. Although I live in Connecticut, so I get Boivert, I get Boisvert, I get any. If you can imagine how it would be pronounced, someone's given me it.
Yeah, and good thing you're not, as my friend would say, they butcher everything in Boston. So
yeah,
the way
we're close enough.
Yeah, they say everything incorrect, and they just call it an accent.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate you getting it right and at least asking.
Yes, for sure. And of course, you're deputy editor at Rabid Habs, and you're a part of the Nosebleeds Cast. Tell us more about the Nosebleeds Cast.
Yeah, it's just I started a podcast, I guess, let's say, it must have been during the 2018 Cup final between the Caps and the Golden Knights. I just sat down it was at first just me and my old college roommate, Trevor. He's a Rangers fan. So I think the first episodes were just us, and then my, at the time, girlfriend and now fiance, Kristen, she joined us as well. So we just sit down, we talk about hockey. Not all the time hockey. We spend a great deal of time talking about other ridiculous things. We had a few weeks where we were very interested in competitive eating. So just reading off competitive eating stats was one of the more interesting things we've done. We do power rankings of things like cereal or, our favorite kind of donut. We try to keep it light, especially when there isn't hockey going on, and we unfortunately haven't had a group episode in quite some time, but we're going to get back at it this week. Hopefully get some more regular episodes back up. It'll just be nice to talk to each other again.
Yeah, it's been kind of the same here, on and off. When do I get back on? When am I doing it? What am I doing it? But right now we have a lot to talk about, and we'll get to the draft lottery, and we'll get to maybe Habs' potential of maybe having that dream, hometown grown kid in maybe a Habs jersey. That would be great to see. But with your podcast, what would you recommend specifically a person that doesn't follow it would want to maybe tune into for it?
So the last thing I put out was sort of a just a project that I had been wanting to do for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's much different from any of the other podcasts. There's no Kristen or Trevor. It's just me.
Yeah.
It's sort of a more produced, story driven episode. I told the story of Teru Sugimoto, and for those who don't know, is the what was it, the 12th round of the 1974 entry draft. The
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo Sabres picked the player Teru Sugimoto from Japan. The only issue was he didn't exist. So the story, what set that up, and sort of got into the weeds with how strange the beginnings were for all of Buffalo. The whole franchise was just kind of goofy. Their PR director Paul Wieland is sort of the catalyst for that whole story, and he had some brilliant ideas for trying to get the Sabres some more attention, both in their local market and in the national market. So it's this isn't my telling of it, but it's a fascinating story from start to finish. The how Buffalo came to exist, how this PR director loved hoaxing people and making stuff up and playing tricks on people to the point where a lot of it was believed.
Wow.
Teru Sugimoto was printed in official NHL draft guides for years after he was drafted because no one caught on that he wasn't real.
Wow.
So it's just one of those stories that captured my imagination. But I mean, outside of that, it's just me and my friends sitting around as we would. It's not very produced. I don't really do a ton of editing to it. We just sit down in my living room and talk. And I now that I haven't been able to see Trevor in a while, and the three of us haven't been together, I miss that sort of thing. So it's always nice to just to get in and talk with people. That's what I would take away the most from our podcast on a regular basis. Is it's just three friends talking about hockey. We answer listener questions pretty regularly. So if you want us to talk about something, we'll plug your Twitter account. We'll plug whatever. Give us something to talk about.
Nice. And yes, your Twitter account is at, maybe it's Ian. You changed it up?
I did.
All right.
It used to be last name, first name. And I got to a point where I was like, maybe I don't want people I work with seeing me.
Yeah.
So just tried to get creative and make it a little more anonymous than it was, but it's still me. You can follow me there. You can follow at Nosebleedscast for the podcast and at Rabbit Habs for the Canadians blog. There's another great podcast that's basically just Canadians talk on Rabbit Habs, the Montreal Bias, run by my friend Zach and his friend Sean. They do a great job there as well. So lots of episodes backlogged for them.
Yes.
Lots of great content over there.
Perfect. And we will also talk about your Draft Lottery blog that you just wrote. And before we get to that, I did want to say congrats on getting engaged. So when's the big day? I'm glad for you too.
Yeah, thanks. We got engaged in November, and we set a date in September of 2021. So we're hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be out of all this by then.
Yeah.
I can't imagine we're in this 2 years later, but
wow.
We're very happy. I've known Kristen since we were in middle school. We've dated since we were in high school. We went to college together. It was it was only a matter of time, and we're both very happy. It's funny, like we've been quarantined with each other for 3 months, and it's kind of been the greatest part about this is that we're, she's my best friend, so it's nice. She loves hockey. We love all the same stuff. Being quarantined with her has been pretty great.
Nice. And the funny thing you mentioned about Buffalo and everything, and then your podcast especially, I was looking into a couple of things, and one was the Mogilny story, and wow, just the whole defection and what the old GM and the scouts and what they did when they went to Sweden, because that's where the World Juniors was happening, or World Championships was happening with them, and the Russian team with Fedorov and Mogilny being there, being of that age, 19, 20, and how they kind of pulled him away, and how Mogilny was like, yeah, I want to leave, and not really being able to speak English and having a translator, and then having maybe people looking out for them and them having to change hotel rooms. It's a really interesting story. I like the defection piece made by Sportsnet on it. It was great. I was trying to see if I could follow that story a little bit more, and I was trying to see if I could find anybody, but it's very hard to read. And I know Mogilny's back in Russia with one of the KHL teams, but wow, that's really interesting. And then even right now, Buffalo seems to always be in the news for the weirdest things, and then they go ahead and just pretty much fire everyone right before an important part with the draft lottery and draft happening.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of, it would have been easier for them had they won the first overall pick, because it would have been a no-brainer. They walk up there and they take Lafreniere first overall. Yeah. Now they're picking 8th, and they've got essentially no scouting department and essentially no front office, and they've got a first-time GM stepping in. I'm always fascinated by Buffalo, because you're right. It just seems like it's one thing after another there. That fan base is one of the most intense, diehard fan bases this NHL or any league has. Yeah. And it's a shame that they can't put a winning product on the ice. It's a shame for Jack Eichel, who seems like already he's going to be one of those players who spends all of his career just dominating, but because of the team around him, he can't win a cup on his own. He can't get his team into the playoffs on his own.
Yeah.
I'm always, I have a soft spot for Buffalo. I went up there for the 2016 draft. It was my first time in that city. I had sort of a preconceived notion about it that it wasn't that great. We had a great time up there. Buffalo kicks ass. Like it was great. So I'm always rooting for them to win. They got to turn that around. Yeah. I hope they get a good pick I hope they get a good player at 8. And I hope the GM kind of just takes his time with this. Stop trying to fix things overnight. I think it started. They've got too much on D as it is. There's some pieces there with value. They can turn it around, but they got to have a guy in charge who knows what he's doing. Whether or not that's Adams remains to be seen, because we haven't been able to see that he's done this anywhere else, because he hasn't had this job anywhere else.
I don't know. I'm kind of in the same boat with you in Buffalo. I would go there because obviously you can be at a younger age drink. Or no, for the vice versa, actually. But I was just, I don't know, the nightlife there was just great. I don't know, I just felt great with all the bars and everything. And the people over there are pretty open and really friendly. And yeah. I know when I'm in Toronto and I wear maybe my Leafs gear and I go somewhere, nobody gives a poop. They're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. I've gone to Sabres games, and I'm like, and the weird thing enough is I actually have quite a few. I do own a lot of jerseys. I have quite a few Sabres jerseys. I have like maybe 4 of them. I have my what I call my son, and Maxim Afinogenov. Oh yeah. I got his jersey. I have a LaFontaine jersey, and I have a couple of other ones. And I've gone there, and I wear I'll wear a Sabres jersey if I'm going to the game, and I'll go to like the mall. And then there are people like, hey, yeah, hopefully they win today. And I don't want to put down too many female hockey fans, but maybe more in Toronto. But I have a lot of female Sabres fans that would come up to me. It's like, oh, yeah, they're going to kick butt tonight. And they would be telling me about who's going to be good that night and everything. I'm like, yeah, I got to move to Buffalo because these chicks care about their hockey. I like this, So I don't know. It's just totally different atmosphere, a little bit more homegrown and more caring about their hockey team there too. And they're pretty passionate there. So it does suck to hear that sometimes their ownership is not, on par with, really trying to turn the team around.
Yeah. That market every year in the Stanley Cup playoffs and Stanley Cup final, that TV market is one of the best TV markets, and the Sabres are nowhere near the playoffs, nowhere near the Stanley Cup final. Imagine they get in, how wild that whole city is going to be.
Yeah.
Even if it's a first round exit, just how wild those games would be in that building. You really, just as a fan of the sport, you have to root for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like you. I've got one Sabres jersey here right now. I have the early 2000s, the Buffa Slug with Vanek on the back, and I just found another one online, the black, what they call the goat head, the black and red
Yeah.
That's on its way too. So they have a great sweater history. I love all their, even the weird ones. They have the one with the swords on the front that they call the butter knives.
Yep.
Yeah, big fan of the Sabres jersey history for sure.
Yeah. That's my Finneganov one is the black and the red and the silver one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good stuff.
So I like that one. It's pretty sweet one, and I guess that he's 61, and my sister was always a number 16 fan. So with like the LaFontaine and the Finneganov and the reverse and everything, so it worked well. All right. So let's get to more of the draft lottery. It's crazy what happened. Everybody's going chaos. Before we get into like the winners and maybe losers and who can move up and down and what happens, what do you think? I think a lot of fans, I'm a little ticked off with them thinking that this was the NHL's plan and that this is kind of like conspiracy theories out there and this is what I think this is kind of bad PR in my mind and how the NHL actually wanted this. I even put it out there. I was talking on Twitter that, you know what, there's no way in hell that a play-in team is going to win this. And then I put a vote out there as well. And Team E was in my top 4 of the vote. And they ended up being second vote, most voted. I was shocked to see Team E win. Oh my goodness. What did you think?
Yeah, my gut reaction at first was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I think everyone sort of went through the same gamut of emotions. There was, right when Bill Daly starts off and he says, well, I have a different number of cards here than I was expecting, which tells me that a placeholder team has won one of the 3 lotteries. So it's like, okay, where did they go? What now we know we're going to have a phase 2 draft lottery right when this thing starts. Yeah. So from an I'll just as a quick aside, from an entertainment perspective, these draft lotteries have been really great over the years. With an exception of last year where they accidentally revealed it beforehand. Some people had a glimpse of the final card before all of the results came in.
That weird leak, hey? That weird leak. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I didn't believe it. Someone said it to me. I said, that's not real. And of course, that exact order is what pops up. But
yep.
And I think Steve Yzerman said this too, obviously the new general manager of the Red Wings. He said, when he was asked, are you surprised that you guys fell or that a placeholder team won? He said, well, not really. They had better odds than we did. And he's not wrong. If you add up the odds of all of the play-in teams, it's like 24% or something like that. Yep. And the Red Wings only had, what did they have? 18.5% chance at number 1. Yep. So there was a better chance that a qualifier team would win the first overall pick than any of the other individual teams. That's kind of strange. But when you think about it again, it's not really all that strange considering that if you looked at those teams, like let's say this was last year's draft lottery and those teams A through H were actual teams, they would have the same combined odds to beat the number 1 seed. And that's the NHL is doing this because they don't want teams like the Red Wings to get in to tank an entire season like they did to try to win a generational player. They don't want to reward that sort of behavior, which I get. But having them push from 1 to 4 is that's got to be a hard pill to swallow if you're a Red Wings fan. You sat through that whole season, you traded. I mean, they didn't trade much because they didn't have much to trade, but Athanasiou's gone. And you're back at sort of square one. They get a great player at 4? Absolutely. Cale Makar went 4 just a few years ago, and that kid's a stud.
Yep.
Especially with Yzerman in charge, I think the Red Wings aren't in trouble. But yeah, this whole draft lottery was bizarre. But the more I think about it, the more I think, okay, this went probably about as I should have expected it. When you look at the small odds that each of these qualifier teams had on their own, the qualifier team H had a 1% chance of winning the lottery.
Yeah.
But, all of the qualifying teams had 0.25% of the chance to walk away with that number 1 pick. So I'm excited to see what they do with the second phase of this, how they end up rolling it out. It should be kind of fun to watch on TV. I hope it's as dramatic as possible. I hope they pull out all the stops and try to figure out the best way to present this information to us, because it's not the same as a regular lottery. So, it'll be another half-hour special. You guys will get it on Sportsnet. We'll get it on NBC Sports down here in the States, and they'll it should be a great time. As much as I don't like seeing Bill Daly all that much, when it's stuff like this and my team's involved, hey, I'm all right with it.
Yeah. Well, Dave Hodge tweeted, "A placeholder winning the NHL Draft Lottery is like a seat filler winning an Oscar." You always gotta get to Dave Hodge, and he always has the best lines. I love that guy. Oh my goodness. It's so interesting with what happens, and I will believe a little bit of the conspiracy theorists if the event for the second draft lottery is a bigger event and a more build-up of a show.
Yeah.
If it is, and they put more effort into it, I'm going to be like, maybe they did mean to do this, because they're putting a lot more, because I heard a lot of people on Twitter and people complaining. I'm like, oh, the lottery's tonight? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Oh, what channel is it on? So they were kind of shocked, and it wasn't as advertised. And you know what? I'm with the NHL on this. I'm like, it's hard to advertise and actually plan for all of this with everything going on right now.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of my biggest complaints about, what the NHL has done since the season paused, is that they seem so anxious to complete things before other prerequisite things are done. We've never held a draft lottery before the season's technically over. It's very strange. And by virtue of that, they have to create all of these strange scenarios where, okay, if this team wins, we have to do another lottery later to see what happens. And it could be a team that would have made the playoffs in the regular season had this not ended. For example, let's say Columbus does what they did last year to Tampa, but they do it to Toronto. Toronto now has a 1 in 8 chance of winning Alexis Lafreniere.
Yep.
That's a bizarre situation to think about. The Pittsburgh Penguins were one of the better teams in the league last year. Let's say Montreal gets hot, Carey Price is on a hot streak, and they beat Pittsburgh. Well, now you could have a top line with Gensel, Crosby, and Lafreniere next year.
Wow.
This is a wild scenario that I don't know if they necessarily intended, but the way that they set up the odds for these placeholder teams to win it makes me think that this was somewhat desirable to them. I do think that the NHL does enjoy the chatter about this level of chaos. They like that their sport is full of parity, and some say parity. I would say randomness. As good as Columbus was last year, them beating Tampa had a degree of randomness to it. This lottery feels entirely random at times. So I don't know. My tinfoil hat is securely put away. I'm not engaging in. I don't think that this was, to take the NBA example, the frozen envelope. I don't think it's that. I think that this is just something really strange happened, but in reality, it's not as strange as we all are making it out to be. They had a statistical advantage over any of the actual teams there. If I'm Detroit, I'm mad, and I should have. I'm sure they expressed how ridiculous this was when they were planning it. We had the worst record. Why aren't we having better odds to win this than the teams that might make the playoffs? Imagine a team loses in Game 5 of their play-in in overtime, and then they go on to win that. They were 1 goal away from the playoffs, and now they're picking first overall. Like the swings in momentum, the swings in, from being at the highest of highs to the lowest of lows is really, really, at least to me, it's very obvious. And I think that the NHL, if they didn't plan for that, it seems like a massive oversight.
Yeah. I remember listening to the 31 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, and Elliot mentioned when he was talking to Trevor Linden, he's saying the biggest day in hockey is the day you have no control, and that's kind of the draft lottery day, in that everything's such up in the air and you have no control, and it's the most vital maybe situation or day of the season for any organization. Mm-hmm. It's crazy if you think of it that way, that this is the most important day for all these organizations, and they have no control. Maybe some teams have tanked, maybe they haven't, maybe teams just edged out of the playoffs, but they could win the lottery and their franchise could totally be turned around overnight. And like you were saying, in a play-in round now, they are on the verge of going far in the playoffs, or in, say, a Game 5 overtime game in the play-in round, they lose, and they're maybe a top team, and they lose that, and then a day later they find out they're getting the first overall pick?
Yeah. Yeah, the emotions are going to be high in that play. And of course, the players are going to play. They're going to go out there. They're going to try their best to try to advance their team. They know what's at stake. They're wired differently than fans like me are, where I'm thinking, okay, there's a really good chance here at number one. Probably the best chance Montreal's had at number one ever, realistically. Although we had the third overall pick a few years ago in Kotkaniemi, and then in 2012 with Galchenyuk. Mm-hmm. But now they're only fighting with 7 other teams for that spot. Although I will say, from the Canadiens' perspective, they've got to be feeling pretty good about their chances to do anything here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of the question that they beat Pittsburgh in the first round in the play-in round. Yeah. They played Pittsburgh pretty tough this year. I think with a well-rested Carey Price, a well-rested Shea Weber, Kotkaniemi's coming back, Drouin's coming back. They've got a legitimate shot. I mean, it's a 5-game series in a sport that's already incredibly random. Mm-hmm. If you're saying that the Canadiens have no chance, I don't know if you've been watching hockey over the last few years. Everyone has a chance on any given night, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I think Detroit swept Montreal, but they also beat Boston 3 times this year. Mm-hmm. So the Canadiens could advance to the next round, to the actual playoffs. I don't think that would surprise me. Of course, the Penguins are the favorite team, but let's say they lose. Okay, now you've got a shot at first overall. And if you lose to the Penguins and you lose the lottery, you're still picking 9th.
Yeah.
So, if I'm Montreal, I'm looking at this going, okay, once the play-in round's over, we're going to have a pretty good idea of where we're headed. We're either in the next round of the playoffs or we have a top 10 pick. That's pretty exciting. I would welcome playoffs. I think I said it in my blog that I posted earlier this morning.
Yeah.
What do I want first and foremost? I want a cup. I want to win something, even if there's going to be an asterisk on this, for better or for worse. This season is weird. There's going to be an asterisk on whatever cup is won this year, but let that be a point of pride for fans of the team that wins. They'll say, I don't care that there's an asterisk. My team won and your team could have, and they didn't. And I poke fun at that in the blog. If my team wins, there's no asterisk, but if your team wins, there's an asterisk. And that's how NHL fans are going to handle this, right? Yeah. Is if the Leafs win, heaven forbid if the Leafs win, everyone will say, no, it doesn't count. And that'll only make Leafs fans louder, and they should be louder about it because they won. They did the thing. Anyone else could have done it, but we did it. So this whole return to play is strange. I don't know how I feel about. It's tough to put myself in the mindset that I'm ready to cheer for these guys to go back when we don't know if they'll be safe. We don't know the hub cities. If it's Vegas, I'm really concerned because the United States, and I say this as someone living there, has done a very poor job controlling all of this. I won't get into the science because I'm not a scientist, but it's not great. We've got players testing positive. We've got spikes in states that have NHL franchises. We've got a lot of, and I live in Connecticut, so we're one of the better states in the country at controlling this. We've effectively flattened the curve in Connecticut, which has been really, really good. I feel safer being here than I would anywhere else. But with that said, like, you know, I don't know how comfortable I am putting these players into jeopardy like this.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm still on the fence that I'm kind of more. I don't really want them to play, but as a hockey fan, I want hockey to come back. But really, I want people to be safe. I've been extra protective, and I think some people are calling me, "Oh, Peter, you're just being afraid. Oh, you're like you're scared of everything. That's why you're wearing a mask." No, I think people that are wearing masks are more courageous. People that are protecting themselves and protecting their friends and family are, being more helpful in terms of our society and the future of it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
where, go ahead.
We only return to normalcy once, if we've done everything correctly. Who knows what normal looks like if we completely botch this? Which is what really concerns me. Like, I love hockey, so the lizard brain part of me is saying, like, I can't wait for this to come back. I'm going to watch hockey all the time. It's going to be great. But these are real people here that are going to be putting their lives on the line, which is something that I don't think is necessary for hockey. Like, it's at the end of the day, it's just hockey. Like, it's not. These aren't emergency employees. They're not urgent. There's nothing. There's nothing about a hockey player that says they need to go back to work.
Yeah.
I saw a pretty heartbreaking Instagram post. Jordy Ben's wife is 9 months pregnant, and they're about to send him back. Well, he's going to come back, and one, he's going to have to quarantine once he leaves, and two, he'll have a new baby there, which is a really hard. It's got to be a harder environment to come back to. You've got to be even safer.
Is he bringing the whole family into the bubble?
I would imagine no.
Yeah.
I would imagine she's sticking behind.
Yeah.
And Vancouver is playing a play-in round. I think they're in a play-in round.
Yeah.
So, he could leave rather quickly if Vancouver gets eliminated. He could stay throughout the entire thing if they go on a run, or he can decide, hey, I'm not going to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I think that I can't find it in myself to blame a single person who says, hey, I got to protect myself and my family. I'm not going.
Yeah.
And this is even before, we found out that a play-in team might win the draft lottery if they lose. If Carey Price, whose wife is pregnant once again and who already has two small children, decides, hey, I'm not going, I'm not telling Carey Price he has to come play.
Yeah.
It's inhumane, really, to be like, you need to come play hockey for my entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that hockey fans need to recognize that that's a reality that we're going to have to deal with. There are going to be players who say, no, I'm not going.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to have to deal with that. There are players with type 1 diabetes, like Max Domi, like Capo Caco, like, so many other players in this league who have pre-existing conditions that are threatened by this disease. So we have to continue to exercise compassion throughout all of this. We're already fans of a physical contact sport, so we've lost a little bit of that. We cheer for the hockey fights, as grotesque as they are. There's this idea that these players are gladiators and that them getting hurt is just part and parcel with their job, but we can't. There already is a reckoning going on with that. Mm-hmm. With everything going on with CTE research and all of that. But I think we have to start bringing this back to real life. There are things other than hockey that are threatening these guys right now that we need to respect.
Yeah.
With that said, I'm going to watch all of these games. And one of the reasons is, well, it's hockey and it's going to be on TV. I'm not going to boycott it. Yeah. And the other reason being, I think it's going to do some good in keeping a lot of people at home. Mm-hmm. I saw the NBA release their return to play schedule, and they're playing out 22 teams remaining are playing like 8 games each, if I have that correct.
Yep. They're playing a season.
Yeah. And there's I don't know if you saw the schedule yet.
Yeah.
There's games like all the time. Like they're starting at like 2:30 in the afternoon and they won't finish. There's like 10 p.m. games.
Yeah.
So they're just going to grind out games for it's got to be weeks.
Yeah.
So, and they're in their own bubble in Orlando, which is really scary considering Florida's having a real hard time right now. And I'm hoping that nothing happens. I'm hoping that if they do go back to play, no one gets sick, no one has really bad complications. I'm hoping that that happens. But the reality is, hoping doesn't really do you much good when you're exposed to this.
Yeah. I thought it was so peculiar with them still charging on with going into Florida when their numbers are even like, they're doubling now. And they're way up there, and it does not look good. Is LA, just going back to that, is LA still a part of one of the options for Hub City?
I don't think LA is.
Not anymore. Good.
I want to say it's down to Vegas, and Edmonton and Toronto. Toronto, I think Toronto's attractive, one, because it's the hub for the league on a regular basis.
Yep.
And two, Ontario, I think, just said that they're one of the lowest, if not the lowest province in the country as far as reported cases. So they're an attractive option. Yeah. Edmonton's attractive because Canada just as a whole has been handling it better, and there's a level of isolation in Edmonton.
Yeah.
You know, all the things that people have made fun of Edmonton for in the past are coming around to be a positive in this particular instance.
Yeah, their numbers are very, very low, and it's a very, not as large city as many of the American cities and rest of Canada. So,
yeah. So, I mean, it sucks. We're, as fans, put in a situation where we want to cheer for our team. We want to watch the sport again. We all miss it. Right before I jumped on, I had on the 1989 Stanley Cup Final. It was on NHL Network, and I was like, man, I miss hockey so much.
Yeah.
My Canadians lost that game, and I was still like, whoa, there's hockey on TV. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But we've gotta understand that, one, players might not go. We have to respect that they're not going to go. And two, this might not get finished. There's a really good chance that this doesn't get done, that we end up with a season that, like the 1919 Stanley Cup Final, goes unfinished. That's the sport, and we've seen this time and time again. This isn't an original thought, and I apologize, I can't remember where I've heard this, but sports are a sign of a well-functioning society, a society that's in normalcy and is thriving. We're not there right now, so it's tough to say, yep, time to bring sports back. I think it would be a false flag to people who are on the fence about how serious this is, because it is serious. And if sports come back, it shows you, hey, look, sports are back. Things are fine. It's not fine. So I hope everyone listening is safe, washing their hands, wearing a mask. If you don't wear a mask, put on a mask. Yeah. That's all I really have to say on that.
Yeah. Let's round it back up and let's get back into a little bit more draft lottery before we let you go. Man, okay, so the other thing is a lot of people are talking about is Winnipeg Jets and how technically they're 12th and technically they won the lottery. I'm not in that boat at all. I'm like, there was still about 10 games left in the season. I don't know about you in terms of who should have won, but it's not Winnipeg in my opinion. It's not Jets' pick at all. And that's why we're doing this play-in round.
Yeah, I love the argument. If I was a Jets fan, I'd be writing the league every day. That's because in a sense they're right. If the season doesn't get completed, if we don't play through the play-in round, they should have the first overall pick, and they won't. The NHL has already come out and said that if the play-in rounds can't be completed and the season ends, that it'll essentially be I think it's the teams in the play-in round who did not qualify immediately for the playoffs.
Yes, the next 8 or whatever it is.
Right. They
will all get a 12% chance, I believe it is, to get that first overall pick.
Right. Yeah. So it's challenging, and I hear Jets fans because that I don't know if it's rightfully theirs because that's not the format they built this time, you know? And who's to say if they ran the lottery, if they ended the season on March, whatever it was, where, Rudy Gobert essentially ended sports, if if they ended it that day and they ran a lottery immediately, if they would have won.
Yeah.
It's tough because looking at it, hey, that's our spot. I get that argument. But I guess that goes back again to the fact that the NHL really wanted to hold this now as opposed to waiting, which I sort of understand. They wanted, I mean, I don't know how many people watched online or on their on TV, but they probably made a little bit of money off of ad revenue for that game. They probably gained a little bit of traction as far as getting fans who are sort of on the fringe excited about coming back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real challenge, and I commend the NHL for trying to be creative with a lot of this. The play-in round is creative. I do like it. The draft lottery that created is creative, if not entirely confusing and overly complicated. But they tried something.
Yeah.
So Jets fans, I think you have the right to be mad. I'm not going to tell you don't be mad, but I don't think that this was your pick, especially because the Jets aren't a bad hockey team. They could go on and win it, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel for Jets fans, especially with them losing so many top 4 defensemen within only a year and a half. And maybe if they had known a little bit of an inkling that Bufflin wasn't sure if he was going to retire or not or coming back, then maybe they wouldn't have traded Trouba or they would have re-signed Myers. So that I do feel bad for Jets fans there in that aspect, and their defense is very different. But they got Hellebuck, and man, in my opinion,
great season.
He should win the Vezina, but that's a different story. In terms of that draft pick, like you were saying, they would have done it much earlier when the draft lottery usually happens, and a very much slimmer chance, of course, if it does happen, then it would have been a totally different outcome.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? That's the whole thing with all of this, with the lottery, anything in the NHL, as I've said, essentially this whole time. There's a level of randomness that's not expected in other sports. Mm-hmm. You just sort of have to take it as it goes. I don't know. Who knows if the season didn't go on? Maybe, I don't know. Do you have to put in every team that wouldn't have qualified for the playoffs? Is it a 31 team lottery?
Do it.
Yeah, full send. I like it. Do they do what they did the year that Crosby was drafted, where they take an aggregate of the last few seasons, average it out, and put the odds out there? Who knows how they end up doing this? I don't think anyone could have blamed them for either of those suggestions I just listed.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for hockey to come back. We'll see how much we get of it. Hoping for safety, of course.
Yeah, I'm thinking out of all the chaos that could happen, I really do like that story of possibly a hometown boy going and getting drafted by Montreal. This would be an amazing story in an otherwise very awful, straight up awful 2020, right? With everything going on, it's just straight up awful. But this would be a great story. Lafreniere, first overall. Habs lose to Pittsburgh, but they get that first overall pick and get Lafreniere. Tell me how that would make you feel, and maybe the Hab community, in terms of having that possibility of getting him, and what that could do to change the franchise a little bit more faster around.
Yeah, I mean, I think it means everything to the team from just an on-ice product perspective. He's as dynamic as a forward as you'll get. He can do it. He can do it all. I haven't watched a ton of him play a ton of his play in the CHL, but just watching his highlights, I watched the World Juniors, obviously. Watching all that stuff was he's spectacular. And to have him be from Montreal, to be in a position, and now think back, the draft was supposed to be on Friday. It was supposed to be on June 26th. I was hoping to be there.
Yeah.
Imagine they had won a lottery and they were going to pick first overall in Montreal. They were going to pick Lafreniere. It was going to be this huge thing. And I had rallied around that, throughout the season, that Mark Bergevin, general manager of the Canadiens, really should have gone all in on that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have sold Jeff Molson on that idea. I don't think it would have been a hard sell to sell off, try to secure yourself better lottery odds. Obviously, we see the way that this lottery was conducted. It's not the best option to go for. It's a lot of uncertainty. But, the idea of picking a player that can represent your city, is from your city, has been something that Montreal has looked for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, they found some. I love Phil Deneau. He's one of my favorite players at the moment. He should be getting some Selke consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'll win, but if he's a finalist, that's a huge step up for this kid who has really played just incredible hockey over the last 2-3 seasons for the Canadiens. They tried with Drouin, bringing him in that trade with Tampa Bay that saw Sergachev go to Florida. That one I don't think has exactly panned out like Bergevin has wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I think the market is starved for that sort of player.
Yeah.
I think that Mark Bergevin will never come out and say it, but I do think that acquiring that hometown talent has always been something of a mandate for this franchise. Now, they don't always draft the French-Canadian player, and just because he's French-Canadian. They tried it, I believe, in 2009 when they last hosted the draft, and they took Louis LeBlanc in the first round.
Yeah.
And that didn't pan out for them. So, there's a lot riding on this franchise to build, with French-Canadian talent. To have one fall into your lap like this would just be an entire game changer for this franchise. You're talking about adding an elite winger. Something the Canadiens haven't had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You add him to a roster that's already got some pretty decent talent. Nick Suzuki really had a breaking out season for the Canadiens this year. He really showed up, and showed that he's got a lot of the offensive instincts that you'd want in a top 6 player. I don't know if he's a first line player, but he's still, I think the ceiling for him could be a 55, 60 point player.
Mm-hmm.
Who I'll take that. You've still got Thomas Tatar, who had a great season. You've got Phil Deneau. I don't think we've seen the best hockey out of Kotkaniemi yet, and I think that there's still a lot of room for him to grow there. Max Domi, the list goes on. We're waiting on guys to come up still. Cole Caulfield is going to play another season in Wisconsin. There's, the reinforcements are coming for this team, but to add a guy like Lafreniere, just have him fall into your lap.
Yeah.
You can't say, Bergevin knew this the whole time. He knew this was going to happen. But, he's always said, expect the unexpected. No one has expected this. It would be a fantastic way for this team to really come back into the forefront. They'll be one of the more exciting teams to watch next season if they land this kid. I think everyone's going to be watching for him, so it's a huge game changer if they end up taking Lafreniere.
Yeah, I wonder, nobody has really put out the odds in terms of those teams that are in the play-in round that they could win that pick. I know Dom has put it out there, but he's in his percentages. It's obviously winning or not winning that series is more big in that odd in terms of getting the pick. But outside of that, I want to know who has the best. I know the teams more in that middle have the best of getting maybe that 12th Team E spot. But
yeah. I think Dom's odds had Columbus first.
Yes.
He thinks that Toronto has the best chance to advance, giving Columbus the best chance to not advance and therefore win the lottery.
Yes. But in my mind, it still would be a team that's more in the middle of all those teams, like closer to where the Jets are, that get kicked out. So obviously we don't know who's going to win the play-in round, and obviously the favorite is Toronto to win it, and then Pittsburgh to beat Montreal, and so on and so forth. But a team more in the middle would have a little bit better odds than the other teams on the top or the end of the play-in round. They're going in. I'm slightly torn. I know you said that you would still rather see Montreal win the play-in round than go at least for a tank. I'm torn only slightly because the Leafs, in my opinion, have a great team. And, of course, to compete for the Cup, they might, again, be missing that defensive top four defenseman. And maybe for these guys just overall to just have more experience and grow up a little bit. And then they're right there in terms of top contenders. So...
yeah, and they might not have to play Boston in the first round like they would in the normal format.
Exactly.
If they get past Columbus, maybe they play a Philly in the first round, and maybe they match up a little bit better.
Yeah.
And maybe they have a chance to exercise those demons against Boston in a later round, as opposed to continually having to just be spoon-fed Boston every year in April.
Yeah.
That's something I really hope the NHL changes. On another note, but
yeah, for sure. That would be that would be interesting to see if they change it and not have I even felt bad. I was obviously Boston again, Boston, and then Tampa, because that division has been very good. Those top three teams, at least Tampa, Boston, Toronto. But I was in the same boat 5-6 years ago when every single year it was Washington, Pittsburgh, and I felt bad for Ovi, where they just kept on getting beat by Pittsburgh, who is a top contender and slightly better than them. But obviously, Washington had a better, maybe regular season, team, and it just pissed me off for them that every single year, how do you compete? How is it not fair that they're trying to build more rivalries instead of top teams just going maybe 1 through 8 further on? But that's a whole nother thing we can get more into. I want to leave you on this note. I hope you're doing well in everything that's going on right now, and you've been with a lot of other people and making sourdough bread. How's that sourdough bread coming, Ian?
It's funny. It was something I really wanted for a while, and then just the idea of being at home all the time and possibly not being able to go to the store, it seemed like a fun idea. So that started, must have been back in March when everything unfolded. I think I ended up making my first loaves in about April.
Yeah. It
was fun. It was an intimidating concept, but getting to it actually isn't that hard. I would recommend other people try it. It's, making bread's pretty fun. Playing with the dough is kind of cool. Seeing something, grow. You watch the starter, which for those who don't know is essentially an active culture of yeast. The yeast from the air feeds off of everything that's in your starter, which is a mix of dough or water and flour.
Mm-hmm.
So watching it grow and breathe essentially is kind of cool. I unfortunately haven't done it in a while.
Yeah.
I want to get back into it though. I was just saying it this morning to my fiance. I was like, I want to make bread again. Yeah. So potentially more baking tweets around the way.
Yes.
So and if that does happen, I will keep everyone in the loop on how my sourdough starter is doing. Nice.
You do that, Ian. All the things that we talked about in this episode will be on jablamsports.com. Go to our podcast for Jablam Sports Hockey, and we will, in our game notes, we'll also tweet out your article that you just posted, your recent episode for the Nosebleeds podcast, and they can reach you at Maybe It's Ian on Twitter, and of course the podcast team at Nosebleeds Cast. Ian, thank you for coming on the show.
Peter, it's always great talking to you, man. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody. I really enjoyed that chat I had there with Ian. We went pretty long. We had a lot to talk about, and it's been a while since we got to talk. He's been on the podcast a couple of times in the previous years, and you can check that out. I know I'm slowly putting on all the old episodes on there, so bear with me. I can only put a maximum per month, and all the episodes I did in the first 4 seasons are slowly going on there, so bear with me. And Paul and Connor that were with me and the rest of them are going to be on there in due time and in due process on the website. Remember, that's it. Remember to go to our website, jablamsports.com, to see all our episodes, and our past ones will be on there. And of course, the game notes for every episode, all the stuff that we talked about with Ian, his blog, we're going to put that on game notes. Of course, his podcast and everything on there. He wrote a great blog about the draft, so that will be a link will be on this episode page for episode 7. And of course, some of the other stuff we mentioned on the show will be on there, and you can comment on our page. You can also comment directly to me in the show on Twitter at Russian98, RUSSIAN 98, or the entire team at Jablam Sports. Of course, please subscribe, and even if you want, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Try to click on those 3 dots for us too, and share this episode with 3 friends of yours. Also, if you like wrestling, go check our new wrestling podcast, Pro Wrestling Explode, brought to you by our team here at Jablam Sports. Joey and Pepperoni and I get into AEW, WWE, and we recap, analyze some recent matches and storylines, and of course, we get into pay-per-views as well and what's in wrestling news. If you have any comments, again, please tweet us, and you can use the hashtag Jablam Sports, JABLAM Sports. Thank you, everyone. Also, I want to give this week's shout-out to Logan. Yeah, I know I gave him the episode off because me and Ian went through pretty much everything we needed to. So Logan, I think he's at Hoagie99, HOGEY 99. You can tweet him if you like, but I just want to say thank you for Logan for helping me out. He's helped me in previous years, and he's been helping me a lot in this season with the Trending Now stuff and just giving me some more input and feedback on the show. So Logan, thank you for helping me out there. All right, that's it for this episode, everyone. To everyone out there, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy.